my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance to spit in his eye. Oh, well, they gave me bars, but I can see between to a dusty yard and long gone green. They call that freedom, if you know what I mean. And I dry my sorrows, but the whiskey's gone.
Hello everybody, welcome to Heidbangers. I'm Mai.
I'm Neil.
And I'm Gordon.
And this is our second episode. Tonight we're going to be talking about, we'll start off talking about what we mean by mental health. This came from one of our listeners on Twitter, All I Want, and they asked us just to kind of clarify exactly what we're talking about when we're discussing mental health. So I think we'll look at sort of almost look at the dictionary definition, but some of the definitions that are out there, but more particularly we'll look at what we mean by mental health. When somebody asks us, like, Neil, like first, if I was to say to you, Neil, you talk about mental health a lot, what do you mean when you're talking about it?
I would say it is the state of your mind, positive or negative, in the condition that it's in, and that helps like shape like yourself, the relationships that you have, things like work, like your social life, your friends and stuff like that. And there's things that will control it, or there's things that like you can control through it. And there's things that will affect it that you have no control over as well.
How about you, Gordon?
Yeah, I'd go with that.
Yeah, pretty much similar, I suppose. It's just feelings, I think, is a key component in my mind around mental health. Because I suppose, because you get things like, obviously there's mental illnesses, but you get like things like dementia and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When we were talking about mental health, I didn't think we were talking about stuff like that. Obviously, there's links to that, and you could start going down that path. But I think it's, if your mind is healthy enough that you can function, how well are you functioning in your everyday life? So that's social side of stuff. Like I say, the feeling side of stuff. Are you managing your feelings in the right way? You channel them in the right way? Are you thinking the right way? Yeah, I think that's probably how I would view when we're speaking about mental health.
I think it's quite a good distinction you made there between mental health and mental illness. But there's a specific condition, and I think when we do like a podcast like this where the topic is mental health, and it's probably worth just sort of qualifying that we're not experts in it, and so we're not going to be spending time, unless we get somebody on, of course, that does know what they're talking about. But specific conditions like you said, Gordon, dementia or bipolar or schizophrenia, anorexia, these kind of conditions that are very sort of specific and need special attention. I think that we're obviously kind of, when we're talking mental health, we're talking more the sort of the general, like you say, how are you feeling, how are you coping with life, type of thing.
See when, because we say this every time, we say we're no experts in mental health, right? But it's quite interesting, because the more I think about it, seeing the context of what we just defined as mental health, what does make you an expert? And then there's like the academic side, right? So psychologists and stuff like that, that's one thing. But if we're talking about everyday things that everybody that's ever lived pretty much has experienced, what we're talking about, feelings, our social interactions with people, how we act, how we deal with our feelings, all that kind of stuff. We've all experienced it, right? So that kind of makes us experts to a certain extent. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's an expert in their own way. I think it's just different to articulating. I don't know what point I'm trying to make, other than I think it's like I'm trying to, like I say, we're not experts as in the academic sense. We can't advise people. We don't want to say the wrong thing and stuff like that. But I suppose in some way we are experts, because we've all kind of been there and done it in some respects to what we define as mental health issues or trials and tribulations. So yeah, I just find that kind of interesting, because again, like I say, we're not putting out there officially we aren't experts, but I think we are closer to experts in some respects than we give ourselves credit for. And I think everybody is. And I think if everybody realizes that they do have the ability to change their mental health for the better, then, and they can be experts in it to a certain extent for themselves, then everybody would probably be in a better place.
So suppose we're experts in our lived experiences, so we know what we've been through and how we've coped with it or not coped with it, depending on the
experts of ourselves probably is what I was trying to say in a long as fuck winded way.
But we couldn't diagnose it. If you came on the podcast and said, "What the fuck is wrong with me here? I keep feeling this." We couldn't diagnose what the issue was. We could just sort of maybe relate to some of the experiences and share some of our experiences with it.
Imagine a phone in that, get a wee phone in and that, and folk phoning up and we're like diagnosing them on that. That would have been really.
Can you imagine how much trouble would be in that? Like how quickly that would go south.
I know, as we're like googling it. Right, have you got this? You got that? You got that? But
now listen, it's on it. But I've always said before though, like if we just were there to listen, obviously we're not going to do that. But if we did, I think most people just need somebody to listen to them and acknowledge their problems, and that goes a long way. That almost is just as good as, like, I don't know about any of you guys, but I've been to see counsellors before, and 9 times out of 10 they say very little. They ask you like a little, they ask you a little question, and then you just talk, and then you feel like you spent like £100 for an hour, and you feel like you're better for it, and they'll just just fucking listening. And I'm not that's wrong. I'm not dismissing their jobs because what they do is brilliant. But I think a lot of the time it is just a bit of validation and the issue that you're experiencing, and someone there to go, well, that's all right to feel like that, and you're right to feel like that, and it's no anything that's out of the ordinary.
So I think that's us besmirched mental health experts and counsellors for an opening 5 to 10 minutes.
I'll take responsibility. Sorry, I'll pack my bags.
I'm joking. The definition of mental health, it's interesting. The World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So when we talk about our mental health, when you recognise that your own mental health might not be in the best place, Neil, would any of those sort of things that the WHO are calling out there act as triggers for you? Like if you weren't coping with work, or you felt you weren't contributing to your community?
No, I think it does, but I think it comes like through like time and like lived experience, as you were saying. Like it took me ages to be able to like acknowledge it was an issue. And that's, I suppose, the main thing about mental health is everybody's got it. Do you know what I mean? So it's not just like we've all got it, and it's like how it defines us as well. Do you know what I mean? But is that thing in which I think being more aware of it, but it comes through like experience as well. So if you're aware of what causes triggers, you can be honest to people. And as Gordon says, it's like the counselling that it's just talking and listening, having a conversation. So if you're able then to like have conversations, get rid of the stigma attached with it, then you'll feel more confident about being able to open up. And then so when you spot something's happening, then you're like, right, I am actually feeling worse, like through work or personal life or Hibs even. But do you mean then you can say, right, I'm able to like, I can talk about, who to go to as well. Do you know what I mean? People in your work or your family and your pals and that as well. So I definitely think it is. It's important, and it's probably that thing. We've probably all been there. That like first step that you take before, like, you know what I mean, just that first like initial conversation that you have in which you admit you're struggling as well. I think that's quite a big one, an important one.
Do you think like there's a knack in recognising when there's like your normal stresses and things that is like normal in inverted commas. If you're watching this, you'll have seen me doing the Lenin inverted commas with my fingers. But the normal, like generally, there's always an element of stress in what you're doing. Like if you go out in the car, there's an element of stress because there'll be other drivers that will wind you up. There'll be traffic that you're maybe not expecting, or you might just be like a nervous driver. But things like that you cope with every day because you have to do it, and you recognise that it's such a low level that it exists, but it doesn't exist to a point where it bothers you. And that sort of stress will permeate other aspects of your life, like relationships or finance or your work, like these
Mhm.
sort of things. Do you, what's the question? Like, do you know how easy you find it to recognize when that normal stress is becoming a problematic stress, or I'm not sure if stress is the right word to use there, but you know what I mean? Where the feelings are becoming problematic rather than just what you would normally expect to cope with.
There's probably different triggers to that though, right? Like, because we talked about this in the last episode about the physical triggers like that stress
Hmm.
causes. So there's that
Mhm.
aspect to it. Like you get I can say a chest or a sore side or something like that,
Lack of
or you
sleep.
aye, all that kind of stuff. Then you're like, something's not right here. Like, but then it's that link between mental health and physical health again.
Mhm.
And your body kind of screaming out to you because your mind isn't right and your mind is that important. That's what it is. It just makes it that important. It highlights it. But I think it's difficult to identify all of this stuff. And I think depending on who you are and how in tune you are with yourself, it's easier and harder depending on the person.
Mhm.
Because I've became a lot more attuned with my mental health states and those sort of triggers over the years. They just like, but deliberately being conscious of it, like having to make a point of it. Otherwise, I think if you don't, it is really difficult, and then it just does start manifesting itself into physical stuff, and then it's 10 times harder because you've got to deal with the physical thing and the mental thing.
Hmm.
Um, but things like just checking in with yourself and learning if you have an outburst, like you're really pissed off and you're really stressed or whatever, and you've just like you lose it and you snap at someone. It's easy just to. I remember when I'm younger, I used to do it all the time and then never really think about it. And then about it, I would just be like, apologize and then move on. Now I'll go, why did I do that?
Mhm.
Like something isn't quite right there.
Hmm.
There's something that's done that to me. There's something been building up or whatever. And I'll sort of check it, realize it, and then take it in and try and adjust for like next time and then or try and figure out what it is that's causing that and rectify it. But it's and kind of going back to the definition, and I was thinking about this when you were talking about something. I was listening, I just was thinking at the same time. I can multitask. Um
I can't.
I can sometimes. So my wife will tell you I can't, but I definitely can. Uh when you're something wrong with you physically, right? And everybody's like this, you phone the doctors. Like
Aye.
just straight away. You just phone the doctors and like, I need to get this sorted, I need to get seen. You compare that to when there's something you realise that there's something that's no right in your head. It's not the same, is it? You didn't just phone the doctor. Like some people, when people are getting better at it because of the awareness around mental health, but it's no at the same level. And
Aye.
I think everybody can agree that mental health and physical health are equally as important to keep healthy.
Yeah.
But it isn't the way we react to it isn't level pegging. Like we react to the physical side a lot more than we do to the mental side, and I
Yeah.
think it is getting better. But that just kind of goes back to what I'm saying. Like there's too many people aren't aware of how to
Hmm.
or how to recognize the mental triggers or how to go about finding out about that. So I think it's like we have with physical stuff's easier to identify, right? And that's what makes it easier. But there's definitely ways of identifying a mental health issue. And I think it needs to be an education piece. Otherwise
Yeah.
it's never going to get any better.
There's
Yeah.
like a credibility. I don't know if the credibility is the right word to use there, right? But see, when I was wee, like growing up, uh, even like going to school, if I didn't feel well for going to school, like I used to get terrible migraines and I would be physically sick with it. Now,
Mhm.
if I hadn't had the sickness bit of it, if I just told my mum or my dad that I've got a migraine, they'd be like, "See how you get on." Right?
Aye.
You would almost like you need to have that physical manifestation of what was wrong with me for other folk to take it seriously
Mm.
and believe that that's what it is. Otherwise, they thought he's probably just chancing his arm and wants a day off. And
Aye.
mental health, because it's like an invisible one, it's not easily diagnosed. It's not like you can take your temperature and go, temperature's a bit high. you've got an issue with your mental health. You know, if you've got a virus, they could check your temperature, or you'll be sneezing or coughing, or you might have a rash, or like these other things manifest. And so instantly you've got some evidence of what's wrong. Do you think there's like an aspect of it that people are reluctant to call the doctor straight away, because the way to find out if there's something wrong is they're just going to ask you questions, and then it's like just based on the answers that you give, and people worry that they're going to be believed or sound silly when they actually say, "This is what's up with me." Like, what do you think about that?
No, I think that's true, and I think it is probably, and it's not like getting political or that, and you feel bad for the NHS because it's struggling. But you'll hear people, it's like, I'm phoning a doctor, but I'm going to have to wait like for an appointment or even counselling. It's like, I don't know even what the waiting list is now for it. You know, like if you're getting it done through NHS, it is a really good service as well. But it's that thing where like it is so true. I remember like one of my mates saying like if you broke your leg, you'd go to like the Royal Infirmary, but if your head's broken, you would go to like the what's the one up at Morningside called again? The Edinburgh, like the for Duncan or that, you know, like the hospitals up there type thing. And it is like you go to like specialist ones of that. You don't just go to, and it is that thing where you need to get it fixed. You need to go there. But yeah, no, and it is. I think it comes with like experiencing that as well. And people are probably just like that, worried, like what are they going to say? What's the doctor going to say? What are people going to think? What work? And I suppose by worrying it, it puts on more pressure. You know what I mean? So it adds to like the stress or the pressure that you've already got from like no feeling well mentally, and then it just sort of like gets worse and worse and worse and builds up on it. The Royal Edinburgh, that was the last one I meant. Total mind blank here.
Yeah, I think I think you're right, because I've thought like that about the NHS, and like I need an appointment, but I'm like, I'm not even going to bother because I know that I'm going to get a phone appointment, and to be honest, I've had family members try to get help for mental health issues, without going into too much detail, and I'm just giving up on going through the NHS, phoning the doctors, because unfortunately, and doctors are great and the NHS is great. I think there's and again, it's something that is getting better, but there's a lot of doctors that don't know how to deal with mental health issues as well, and they just kind of fob it off, and I've seen it, and they've had no choice but to go down private route, which they started, and it costs a lot of money, and they couldn't afford it, and then they couldn't get the help they needed, and look, they've been all right, but I could have went completely the other way. Like they could have just been like, well, can I afford £100 a session? I can't get help with the NHS because my doctor says there's nothing wrong with me. And then you're kind of in that situation. So it's things like the free services, your mindfulness apps, podcasts like this one to a certain extent and stuff are so vital now, to help alleviate that kind of issue, I suppose. And I don't know, like it's something we probably need to do more of in terms of promoting, like we've got Sam H, for example, promoting some of these sort of free sort of community services that offer this kind of help, because like I say, I've seen the NHS fail people in that regard, and there's obviously reasons as to why. But it's is what it is. I think we need to, we can try and do that, but I think there is a lot of stuff out there, and people, I would implore people that are listening, have got issues and they've experienced a similar sort of situation, try and get online and try and look to see if there is something out there that can help you that's potentially free of charge, because we're already worried about money and stuff like that, and nobody wants to have that over their heads, because again, it's another thing that, like, imagine if you weighed it up, if say you had something wrong physically with you and the surgery cost money for whatever reason, right? It doesn't in NHS, but imagine in America, right? Just say, for example, like they pay for like their healthcare and the insurance and all the rest of it. I wonder if like people, well, hypothetical, but would people prioritize that over their mental health? I think they would.
I think it's because the physical ones are more evidently debilitating, and at least initially. Well, I think we know that mental health can be very debilitating. but it might take longer to get you to that point. Whereas if you, to use your analogy, Neil, with the broken leg, that stops you walking straight away. Do you know, like, so if you have to fix something, that's the one that you would go to first. I think we should just say, like, we're talking about the NHS and finding online resources and everything. And there are, I think, people who need critical help go to the phone the doctor.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, and get the help for that bit first of all. How do you cope with the everyday stresses in life and to stop it becoming problematic? Because we talked there about sort of recognising when something's becoming an issue. And Gordon, I meant to ask you a bit more about, you have that process of asking, right, I've snapped at that person there, but why? How did you get to the point where you were kind of comfortable, like, exploring it? And what does that process look like when you do it, if you don't mind me asking?
Aye, so the reason I went down that path is starting to look at ways to help myself mentally was because I got to the point where I was not out of control, but, and I spoke about this like ages ago. I think the first Heidbangers ever came on was like anger issues. Like I was just angry all the time, and I felt just angry about everything, and it was really affecting my family and my life in general. Really, I was just always angry, and it just really brought me down. So unfortunately, I had to come to some sort of head. Didn't come to a head where it was, I didn't do anything ridiculously bad. I didn't self-harm or anything like that, but it was enough of a point for me to go, I need to do something here. And then I started looking at mindfulness and meditation, and I can't even mind I don't know if it would just, I mean, the Headspace app was becoming quite a big thing at the time, or someone that I worked with, I think, had mentioned they were quite into meditation and stuff, or it was something like that. I can't actually remember the exact thing that brought me onto it, but I just started down that path of like meditating every day, listening to podcasts with Deepak Chopra, who's like a massive sort of, I don't know what it is, like he's like a guru, mental health guru, I suppose. Many people have probably heard of him, but he is like huge, owns a massive company that does a lot of science-based stuff around mental health. And some of the stuff that he was talking about in terms of the past and the present and the future and how you deal with all that kind of stuff and just living in the moment and all that, and the way he rationalized it and explained it just really clicked with me. And I've been doing it ever since, sometimes more than other times. But my process is just basically and I suppose it started off as just like the basic stuff, breathing techniques, just listening to my breathing, just stopping wherever I was. And I deliberately tried like meditating when I was on the bus to work, which like you want to do it somewhere quiet and stuff. And I was like, no, see if I can nail this when I've got all the distractions of people getting on off the bus. Am I going over all the potholes that are everywhere in fucking Edinburgh? And
whilst you're wearing your yoga outfit and you're like on the bus,
I was just
sitting there like,
no, I just like literally just close my eyes with my headphones in, and I managed to get really good at it. And I was just building up that sort of way of checking in with myself, no matter where I was or what I was doing, so that I knew that if I could do that, where there was loads of distractions around us, I'm into something, that when it came to a point where I was like, I'm going to fucking snap here, or I'm going to break out greeting, or I'm going to whatever, I could instantly, or as quickly as possible, like, and I'm not saying that I'm completely like perfect and I can deal with anything that comes up. I still have moments where I lose my head. I still have moments where I just cry very often, but I catch it much quicker because of that process that I went through, where I just deliberately tried everything I could to find as much out about myself, all my limits, everything that I was capable or not capable of handling, all the stuff that was bothering me, all those sort of triggers. And I haven't even scratched the surface, but I know enough that when these kind of things happen or they're about to happen, that I can just instantly kind of just remove myself. Because before, like, take example, like arguing with my missus, before I would just keep arguing for fucking, it would just go on and on and on, and it would just like, I'm sure everybody's been there, and she's just as bad as me. We're both stubborn, and it's just like, see now, I'll ever argue because I will just, like, I'll start, or it's about to start, and I will just remove myself for the room, just walk into another room, go to the toilet, go into the car, whatever I need to do, sit, close my eyes, breathe, count my breathing in and out, and then just check in with myself and go, right, why is this happening? Why are you being so stupid? Life is too short for this shit. Just whatever mantra or whatever you need to tell yourself, this is whatever it was is in the past now. Don't worry about it. Just deal with now. And it does, it works. And it does work. And again, I'm no perfect at all. I still have loads of moments. I still struggle. At the end of last year, I was really down. And like, you get to that point where it's just, no, this isn't working how it used to work, but it works 8 times out of 10 maybe, and that's enough for me to make a big difference to my life.
See, you were talking about your limits, and you say like you recognise the things that you could do, the things that you couldn't. Is the list of things that you couldn't got shorter now that you know how to deal with things? Like, have you expanded what you're capable of?
If I had time to find out, that would be good. But I don't know. I've not really rationalised like that, to be honest. I just kind of just check that, right, I can do this at the time. So, and I've not really thought back on it. It's just, like I say, I try so hard to just live in the moment, like, as much as possible. And like trivial stuff, obviously you still got to like worry about paying your next bill, or you're going on holiday later this year, or you've got Christmas coming up. You've got to think in the future, right? Or what meetings you've got in the morning at work and all that kind of stuff. But I try not to do that too much, and just, like I say, live in the moment. So those things that at the time I was like, I can't do this, or I can't fucking handle this, I managed to, by hook or by crook, convince myself that I could. So probably without consciously realising it. Because like I say, I've not really thought back and went, oh, those 9 things that I said I couldn't do to myself, I did actually do, or I could actually do. But I know you mention it, I probably did.
That's good, eh? So it was interesting when you said that. I was curious because I would think that would be one of the benefits of doing that sort of exercise, is that the stuff that initially was bothering somebody through over time, when you learn to just kind of cope with things, that it's like your trigger point gets further and further and further away, because you know, I've got this as you kind of go. What you, Neil? What sort of strategies do you take?
I think it's like reflecting definitely is a big one, just to say like what's caused it, what's made me feel like that. And I think it's over the experience that I had where like had mental health issues and I never acknowledged it or like just dismissed it. And then when you realise that it is like your mental health, and it's like, right, so it is things like mood, like if you're angry or upset. So it's that thing where I suppose it's right in the middle of the circle. But how does it get to that point? If you think it is like the bullseye on a dartboard, where is it coming in at? Do you know what I mean? Are you like double tops? That there's something which is maybe an issue like at work, which they'll then trickle into something else, and that causes, you know what I mean? So it's a case of sort of looking at it and trying to like stop it, cut it off at the pass as quickly as possible. You know, like, so before it gets to the bullseye, you're like trying to like get there at the starts, and that comes with experience, and it's probably worth pointing out as well. Same like the resolutions in Atlassic says like takes ages to do stuff in it, but with mental health in it takes ages. It's no like, and we're like, well, we've got lived experience, we're no experts, but I know like there'll be people like if they're listening to this and they think, right, like it's got to be, I'm maybe feeling low today, been quite bad, but tomorrow I'm going to be like amazing. It will take time to build on it, and it's through like exercise, and be it like a mental exercise of being able to like spot it, be honest about it, identify the triggers, and then you just stop them getting to that point where it hits the bullseye, which like causes you to like react in a way that you don't want to react.
Do you ever find you get blindsided by something? You're like, is that ability to recognise something coming down the line, if that's like your sort of strategy and understanding it, what would you do if something blindsides you and you're dealing with something you weren't expecting to deal with?
I know that's a really good one because then you're thinking, and I suppose it's that thing where you're thinking, right, this is what's coming up. I know it's going to be like a strain or a stress or it's going to be pressure, but then if something else comes along and it takes it completely out, it's just trying to adjust like quickly, or just even adjust to like the other, the thing that you're dealing with. But again, a lot of it is like when you're talking to people, they're able to like maybe rationalize it, and that's the whole thing with like therapy and stuff. Or even if you're non-therapy, just speaking to people, like those around you, just to say this is the problem, and then when you actually say it out, they'll maybe like say, well, what about this or what about that? So I suppose it does take time to sort of get used to that and build upon that. But yeah, it's worth, and it took me like years to become depressed. I suppose it wasn't like a Tuesday I woke up and it must have just taken far longer. And it's a thing where again you don't acknowledge it, and it just sort of builds away. And so while it took ages for me to get bad, it took me like a while to get better. But it's definitely a journey worth taking. Don't know
Interesting
if
to
that
get
answers
your.
your question, eh?
That was good. That was a good answer. I was interested to get your take on it, Matty. Like how you deal with the sort of the stresses and that and triggers.
So generally, my approach is to try and keep things in perspective. I think that's like really important because there can be some things that seem really, really massive at the time,
Yeah,
and you can get drawn into that very, very quickly. And a small, or what a lot of people would see would be a small issue, can blow up, and then all of a sudden it's dominating your thoughts, or it gets you, all of a sudden you're 10 out of 10 on the rage scale because it's you're just caught up in that moment. But if you can take a step back and sort of say like, oh, how important is it? And see in the grand scheme of things, that tends to be my approach to a lot of things. Like something will,
mm-hmm.
like if you crash the car, for example, there's been a car crash before, and it's an annoying thing to happen. Like, and there's folk who would absolutely flip their lid if somebody crashed into them.
Yeah,
But it's just metal. Do you know, like I wasn't hurt. Is that a bit about sort of saying, what's the big deal here? Do you know, like if you strip everything
mm-hmm.
back and say, well, what's the actual big deal? What am I getting wound up about here? And is it worth getting wound up about?
Yeah,
Um, and I do that with a lot of things. I sort of have an assumption that most things will be all right as well, which is maybe naive.
mm-hmm.
But my general approach to things is if it's like a tricky situation that you're going into, so maybe if you have to, like public speaking, for example, is something that folk get wound up about, and you think, well, you can understand why, because you might make a mistake, you might say
Yeah.
something stupid, you might tell a joke
You're in
that
front of
doesn't
people.
land, and
Uh,
and then folk will or think, oh, they might think less of you, and you have to cope with that, maybe embarrassment or overcome some shyness or whatever. But the same thing, like it'll probably be right. Folk speak publicly a lot. Folk who are idiots, they like Donald Trump, got to
uh,
fucking president, uh, and he says stupid things every speech he makes. Do you know, like, and he literally
yeah,
does, and he just rides it out. And you think, what's the worst that will happen? I have that. So probably everything will be all right. And then can I cope with if everything went wrong that I think could go wrong
uh,
here? Could I cope with it? And what would happen? What would it look like? Um, I can't remember where I saw it. There was like a thing about. So was it always like that? I remember watching a program, and it might have been Paul McKenna or something like this. Like one of the TV hypnotists or something, getting somebody over their fear of spiders. And basically, she's like, "How would you feel if there was a spider in the next room?" And they're like, "Well, I'm not really bothered. I can't see it." And then they just gradually, well, what would you feel like if it was in this room but up in that far corner? And then eventually they kind of talk to them and say, right, and if it got on your hand, what would that actually feel like? And they're like, probably wouldn't even really notice it. And you sort of like through that process, you just sort of gradually, well, what would happen? Like what you worried about with the spider, like it's going to touch it or you're going to have to deal with it. And but what if you do? What happens then? And then the
mm-hmm.
person was like, I can't bother about it. Or flying, I used to like kind of really be nervous about flying, and then you think, well, it's all right. Like if the worst happened, and I was in a plane, and the worst thing happened, I'm not going to care about it. Like,
I know.
it's there's nothing you could do. You'd be
No.
terrified for that short moment in time, and then that's it.
Just shout,
You
go away,
have
big nasty mountain.
aye.
Billy Connolly.
So things like that, and the other thing that I try to use is like I have a bit of a surrealist mind with things, like a big fan of like sort of surrealist humour, and I try to find the funny side in topics. If situations that are going on, there's generally like if you and against that, taking a step back and saying like if it wasn't me in that situation, how ludicrous would I find what's happening? So if it was somebody getting like really like the car crash and you saw somebody getting really angry about it, it's like imagine you were stepping out and you were watching that. How would you think about that person's behaviour? Or you're like, oh, I wouldn't want to be that person, or you'd find something funny about it, or what would be a funny thing to say here instead of being angry about it. What would be the funny response to what's just happened? And I think about that a lot. Not that you would tell for the other podcasts that we do. We would try to be funny. It doesn't work. But that's how my head works. With a lot of serious things that I think I might otherwise struggle with, I tend to kind of go, right, what would make me laugh about this situation if I was so invested in it emotionally?
Do you think that, so Neil mentioned there about like it comes with experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so everything you've mentioned there seems like you can rationalize it through almost life experience, right? Because I imagine like the older you got, the more you've driven for how many years or whatever, rather than like you're 17, you've just got in the car, you've been driving for 10, 15, 20 years, and you've been in a car crash, or you've seen someone else, or someone has been in a car crash, and then even like things like the spider, you've been round like 100 spiders. Well, you've probably been around millions, but they kind of but hundreds of spiders. Whereas when you were younger, you were around like 4 that you know of. For example, it's like, did that process that you're talking about and the way you rationalise stuff get easier as you've got older and more experienced?
So I think I've always been pretty laid back about stuff. The things that used to upset me when I was wee were all emotional things, like if something happened to my mum and dad, or like that the sort of things that I think would be normal for kids to worry about. And then, it is experience because somebody dies. The thing you worry about, you go like, so you lose a grandparent, right, which happens to us all, right? At some point there'll be a death of somebody that we're close to, fact of life, that you can't go past it, and you realise that you can cope with that. Like, it's no nice, and you miss them terribly, and there's a void there for a bit, but you realise that you still wake up the next morning, don't you? And the morning after that you wake up, and the morning after that one, and gradually over time life just moves on. You can deal with it, and you know that you can deal with it. So the thing that you worry about, like, because we'll lose a parent at some point as well, that's like, if you get past it, so the experience definitely helps. And I think this is daft as well. You get sent on stuff with work, like courses and things like that, where they give you sort of tips and techniques, and that I'm kind of landing with. But we kind of talked about it off the podcast, and I mentioned it in maybe a short bangers or long bangers before, about the woman that came in and told us about being more like a gazelle. And actually, the idea being that a gazelle will, at some point in its life, face out in the wild, not the ones in the zoos, but out in the wild, will face a life or death moment where a predator is chasing it, and it'll run. And for that 30 seconds or however long that chase lasts, it's in mortal danger. But as soon as that danger passes, the gazelle just carries on with its life. It just gets on with its day. It doesn't go, by the way, everybody, and tell everybody, for this happened to me, spend 10 years in counselling going on about this time that a lion nearly got it. It's, I've just got to have some grass. I said, there was actually a clip on Twitter the day, there was a buffalo getting eaten by, there was 4 lions that were eating it. The lions started fighting each other over and they were distracted. The buffalo just got up and walked away. so like, it was obviously like it had to be eaten to the point where it was dead. It was just like, they're distracted, I'm off. And it literally just kind of had a wee look over its shoulders, just walked, didn't run away, and then just got on with its neck, and it went over the brow of the hill, and that was that. I never followed it up. It might have gone on and on about that for ages. It might still be dining out in that story now.
I was going to say that. How do you ken? You just speak gazelle.
I'm making some assumptions here, but that sort of resonated with me as well. It's like why would you we choose to hang on to things,
Uh,
and there is a choices that's made in a lot of like how we react to situations. And there's no for everybody. I know there are people who are maybe where a lot of that choice is taken away. Like they have conditions that mean it's not like you can't choose. I'm not going to be depressed, right? Or I'm not going to be stressed about a situation. But you can choose, and I believe that when you're healthy and in a good state of mind, you can choose how you react to a situation, like a car crash or
yeah,
Hibs getting beat by Hearts. Like years ago, that'd ruin your weekend, but you can choose to kind of go. By the time I'm like at the bottom of the stairs at the stadium, and I'm ready to have a chat about it on Twitter, time that chat's gone, I'm bothered my backside about it. I'm not letting that ruin my weekend. Why would you? It's stupid.
I know.
But it's a choice though, because I could choose to just stew in that all week and then get
Right.
wound up by it.
That's what I like. I've mentioned it before, and I'll probably say it again a few times. But my mantra, and everybody's probably going, "Fucking hell, here goes Gordon again with his pish." But birthday card pish is
Aye.
what Martin Constant and Gordon Smart are always on about. But my mantra is, "What's in the past no longer exists, only in you." And it's that, honestly, that mantra, like that whole thing I was talking about, that process and the things that I went through and to check in myself and stuff like that mantra made like life changing for me, like absolutely life affirming and life changing. Just the realization that, and being able to say to myself and let things go that, oh, that's that thing that happened to me and nobody fucking else. Nobody even knew about it. Or for it as an example, it's me that's holding on to it. It's me that's like making it a thing in my head. I'm the one that's, if I just realize that and then let it fucking go, it's gone. Like it's the way in the ether. There's no coming back. Like it's happened and it's gone. And it's easier said than done. But if you can realize that and just kind of try and apply that to as much things in your life as possible, then yeah, like if there's, can you imagine? Like you put it this way, right? It's like sci-fi version, right? If say like a horrific thing that's happened in the past, say like 9/11 or something like that, if someone had a machine that could just go and wipe everybody's memory of that out in the whole world, then all the grief and all the horrendous things that came out of that and all the rest of it just kind of like disappears. It's us that's holding on, and in some respects, it's right to hold on to these stuff to for the memories and out of respect and sort of celebrating the people that were risked their lives and gave their lives to try and rescue people and all that kind of stuff. But think about how, just as an example, maybe it's a bad example, but if you could remove that thought from everybody's head in the world and that memory, all that grief and everything around it just kind of disappears because it, like, you just never remember it. The people that were involved in it and so affected by it, like, it's just not there anymore. So they're no upset about it anymore. So it's that kind of same principle on a much smaller scale, obviously. So I just, when you're saying that there about like that experience and those situations, and then you kind of making a big thing out of them, we do have the power to deal with that and say, like, look, it's happened, it's gone, it's me that's holding on to it. I need to deal with that in such a way. Whatever best is the best way for you to deal with it. Either lock it in a box or get rid of it or embrace it or whatever.
Embracing it's a good one, Gordon, as well, because I think that's the other thing is when you own something and you accept that it's part, like, so the experiences that happen to us help form the people that we are, and that bit about the past only exists in you. I think that's a brilliant way to put it. And you could choose to have past experiences impact you negatively, or you could take the positives for them as well. And even bad things that happen to you, there will be about where you recognise that you've come through it. It goes back to what we were talking about, like kind of the what's the worst that would happen. Like, bad things have happened to people, bad things have happened to us. You know, you've experienced bad things in your life, but you're still here. You're still living a good life. You know, you still got people that love you. You've got friends and family, and you know all the rest that you've come through it. And if you understand that bad things happen, chances are when you come out the other side, you'll still be all right. There's still a life to be lived there. That helps as well.
Yeah.
One of my mates, who's a Hibby, Mark, he's been like really good helping me with stuff recently. But he came up, he told me something just makes sense. So, and it says everything's temporary.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? And I know something like, when it like, there'd be situations in that, like people getting like illnesses and stuff like that, or, you know what I mean? And but for a lot of stuff, it is like, this is it today, but like tomorrow it might not be like that. And how can we get around that? That resonated with me. And another mate of mine as well, Craig, a few years ago when I was doing football reporting, I had a chance to do rugby reporting through Craig's dad. And he got in contact, Craig's dad got in contact with me, and I was like, I've got an idea about rugby, but I don't know if I could actually write like 700 words on a game. So Craig phoned me back and he's like, he spoke to my dad and went, "Aye, was you going to do it?" And I went, "I don't know, way, just I'm not confident." And he just summed it up perfectly. He just says, "What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to fuck it up." Do you know what I mean? Nobody's going to die. Nobody's going to get hurt. You're going to fuck up. I was like, aye. That does make, what is the worst that's going to happen in the actual situation that you're in? Just, as long as nobody dies or nobody gets hurt, then you're all right. And I like that. Just that, you just need that, like, you just need people to be blunt about it sometimes, you know what I mean? But I don't mean like the like man up and stuff like that. Just like rationalize it. What's the worst that's going to happen? You fuck up.
Rationalising is a great way of putting it.
Mhm.
That bit about
Aye.
just talk it through with somebody. What you worried about, and what if what you're worried about happens? Would you cope with it? And chances are that you might need some help. You might need other people's input or somebody to do something for you to help you get through it. But chances are that you'd find a way through it.
One thing I was going to say to you, Matty, but it
Uh-huh.
was interesting, how like you says, and it obviously the Hibs result, you don't want to impact on your weekend, and I'm very much like that as well. But what happens when, like, say if they'd won, then it's sort of like, are we picking and choosing the moments that
Oh,
define,
aye.
like, and it's mad that though, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So, and I'm very much the same as you, like, good beat, fair enough. Do you know what I mean? Nobody's died, nobody's got hurt. But then
So
if
you
they'd won,
you
it's
can
like,
you can flip that though, like because this
aye,
obviously this podcast is all inclusive. So if Hearts fans are listening, they're probably in cloud
aye,
nine right now,
aye,
Yeah.
and
exactly, aye,
fair play to them. You
aye,
know what I
aye,
mean?
definitely fair play to them, aye.
If a football match and it's brought us down a bit has made someone else happy, then that's
Aye,
all right with me. In
aye,
that sense.
I use
aye,
and this is how ridiculous we are as like I kind of group us as men. I'm sure the women that do this as well, right? But how basic our needs are sometimes. Uh, for a long time, if I was in a situation that I wasn't really happy with, I could take myself back like that to the winner of the cup final, like in
aye,
a split second, and instantly I feel better. Like the euphoria that was there at the time, it's like it kind of I've almost sort of trained myself to kind of go back to remember how you felt in that moment, but it was like
aye,
just like euphoria is probably like total ecstasy.
aye,
Folk jumping about, cuddling, it's folk falling down the stairs. There's like this massive pylon, everybody's bouncing, the sun's shining.
aye,
Nothing seems as bad after that. Like, and I
aye,
could. It's like a switch when I know like I'm having a bad day. I didn't have to watch the DVD or pull it up on YouTube or anything. I can just go in my head, just
aye,
recall it, and right away I can lift my mood. I do that much quicker than dwelling on a bad result. The bad result goes like that right away.
aye,
Like the other final that we didn't talk about, I have no
aye,
recollection of that. Like I'm sure it's locked
nah,
away somewhere in my psyche. That if I was to sit down on a sofa with somebody, they could probably unpick it. As far as I'm concerned, it didn't happen. It's just I was
aye,
But it's you're selecting it then, and
yeah.
that's so going back to the whole like forgetting about everything that's in the past and no holding on to it. You should pick or choose. So like what I'm saying is,
Aye,
don't forget about fucking
it's all
everything.
right to do it. Yeah,
Aye,
aye,
you've got to remember the stuff that makes you happy and feel good and have good feelings and increases your mental health. It's the stuff that doesn't and brings you down. And so I suppose there's an element of identifying and that as well. I mean, like the game we did talk about is an easy one to identify, right? But there's
aye,
probably a load of other stuff in your life um that is harder to identify
hmm
by quite a distance, and you're like you wouldn't initially think that that's something that's causing you pain or angst.
aye,
Um, so there's that part is identification, the rationalization, and then the action is do I get rid of it or do I keep hold of it?
aye.
aye,
And you can go back to what I said about using the negative for positives. Going into the game on yesterday, we talked, my son was nervous because we were not in a good place. I said we were at that one mind. and we got through it. Like we coped with it.
Aye.
That whatever happens today is not going to be as bad as that day, and you're still here.
Mhm.
And
Aye.
we're going to this game. It didn't impact you enough that it stopped you going to the football. So don't worry about
Aye.
today. It's not going to be as bad as that. No matter what happens, and you can take away a lot of nerves and a lot of angst about it if you just recognise that. But yeah, you've been through bad things before. Like you can cope with it.
Yeah, but I want more resilient than we give ourselves credit for.
Absolutely,
100%.
Definitely.
absolutely. Right. I think on that note, we're probably out of time for the night. Good episode. I kind of started off talking about what we meant by mental health and sort of rounded off by talking about resilience and techniques. So hopefully that's interesting for the folk listening. If there's any particular topics I think that folk want us to cover off, then by all means send us a tweet at our new Twitter account, which is at Heidbangers Pod.
That's it.
And the email address, Gordon?
Heatbangers@gmail.com.
Spot on.
Perfect. I was just going to say as well, me and Dave Thompson are doing Never Dropping for folk for the changing room. It helps men tackle mental health through football, but there's a drop-in that we're doing Monday the 30th of January, last Monday month, that'll be Monday the 30th. So it depends on when people listen to this, like they could be listening to this and like sometime in the future and that's irrelevant. But
They definitely will be in the future.
if you're listening to it,
I could be live. I'll be live.
I'll be live, aye. But if you're listening to it, like normally, but I've made that I fucked up. But now if you're listening to it before Monday the 30th, you want to come along, it's come along, Famous Five Stand. It's open to not just Hibs fans, anybody can come along. Famous Five Stand, 6 o'clock. Doesn't cost you anything. Confidential, whatever like gets said there stays there. It's safe. Maybe be tea and biscuits, just a chance to chat. But 90 minutes, I'd say. But yeah, if you want, just come along. And they are looking to start a changing room session soon for Hibs fans because there's probably a lot of depressed Hibs fans just now. It's a 12-week programme, so there'll be more details about that soon as well.
Nice one.
Right. Is the changing room you'll do like stuff outside the Hibs, like more generic for other teams as well?
Nah. So they did it. Hibs are the first ones. Hearts were next, and it's now at 27 clubs around Scotland. So it's really good to see it because like Hibs are the first. I was in the second programme, so to see it where it's now, or to see where it was then to where it is now, like clubs, and you see stuff like. And I was at a conference thing for it last year at Hampden, and Montrose were represented, and they says it was interesting. They put their changing room, like talked about changing room on Twitter, and it's the biggest reaction they've ever had to anything on Twitter. Was talking about like the changing room and mental health and stuff like that. It says they just couldn't believe it. It just like
Brilliant.
Blew up. So that good. There is a need for it, and it's good. So yeah, I mean they will be hosting that. So come along if you want. Famous 5, 6 o'clock. Monday the 30th. Unless you're listening to this on Tuesday the 31st of January or thereafter, then you've missed it. Sorry.
Yeah, but I'm sure they can reach out on social media or whatever and look what else there is out there. For
definitely, and it goes back to that thing. I know we're like the longest wrap up ever, but the whole thing that you were saying about like the NHS and stuff, there is things out there, and that's one of them. Do you know what I mean? Like in the NHS, they should be more like no slag them, but hopefully they're going to be more in tune for stuff like that. Or there's like gardening clubs and that as well. If football isn't your thing, so it's that thing while you're waiting to get like the professional help, the stuff that's going to like help you. There's other things in place that will like help you until you get that. Do you know what I mean? Like the changing room or gardening clubs, or there's like, is it man sheds and stuff like that? Like the old guys, but like elderly guys, older guys, probably guys our age now actually. Go along and like make tools, make stuff with tools. But I'm having a nightmare tonight. This is bad. But anyway, everything's temporary.
Everything's temporary, exactly. Right, thanks very much for tuning in, Gordon. Neil, thanks very much for your time tonight as well.
Thank you for yours, Matty.
Thank you. Get in touch with us at our socials, and we'll see you next time.
County line, I pledged upon. Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee.